Funding for this program is made possible by Burke Nursery and Garden Center in Burke, Virginia. You'll find trees and shrubs, perennials and annuals, water garden supplies, houseplants, and bird and gardening supplies. Burke Nursery also provides landscape, plant diagnostic, and installation services, and much more. For more information, you can check out their website or call 703-323-1188. Welcome to Gardening with Burke Nursery, the show where we help you grow your garden, increase the curb appeal of your yard, and share information on all your plants. I'm your host, Misty Kuceris, the horticulturalist at Burke Nursery and Garden Center. I love talking about bringing nature indoors with houseplants. They can increase that splash of color in your home or bring architectural interest to your living space. And the various different types of houseplants now available are phenomenal. So join me today as we talk about houseplants, the exotics. When I was a child, my mother filled our home with houseplants. She'd have a Christmas cactus that bloomed year-round. Her Dracaena, also known as a corn plant, reached the ceiling and beyond. She actually put a string up to the ceiling to let it keep growing. And there were Dieffenbachias and philodendrons scattered throughout the various rooms, all of what I now call the classic houseplants, or the usual suspects. But today, I want to talk about some of the newer plants you'll find at garden centers and nurseries. And I'd like to begin with one of my favorites, the Flamingo Flower, also known as the Anthurium. When I first got involved with horticulture and I saw the Flamingo Flower, I thought that this flower was actually a native of Hawaii. And the reason is that you will see this all over the various Hawaiian islands. And there are even some areas in Hawaii that call this their plant. But in actuality, the flamingo plant, the flamingo flower, didn't make it to Hawaii until the late 1800s. It's actually a native of Colombia and Ecuador, and it got to Hawaii via Ecuador to England and England to Hawaii. Now it is just a phenomenal plant. The name comes from Greek, and anthos means flower, while aura means tail. And if you look at this plant, what you will see is that this is actually called a spathe. So a lot of people think that this is the flower, but this is not the actual flower. This little tail is the actual flower. And it's just a cluster of flowers. If you ever have a microscope and you want to take a look under a microscope, it's just an amazing sight. And this plant is also a epiphyte. What are epiphytes? Well, epiphytes are air plants. These are plants that normally grow in crevices of trees or in crevices of rocks, and they rarely really like to be in the soil. So if you take a look at this flamingo flower, you'll see it has what I call aerial roots. And aerial roots are very important. I'll actually have people ask me whether or not they're doing something wrong because the roots are coming out of the potting mix. And I even have a picture because an orchid is also an epiphyte. And if you look at the picture of the orchid, you'll be able to see what I'm talking about with the aerial roots even better. The other thing is that what we are calling the flower, which is actually the spathe, which is technically a modified leaf, comes in a lot of colors. It comes in white. It comes in green. It comes in the red that you see here. It comes in pink. It comes in salmon. And some of the leaves are even a combination of the color of red, white, and green, all in one of the space. When you have this plant in your home, it needs bright but indirect light. And what that means is you don't want to put it in the window, but you want to have it in the bright light. And because it is in the family of air plants, the epiphytes, you don't want to water it a lot. As a matter of fact, too much watering will give it root rot. So sparsely water it. Just keep the soil a little moist and you'll be fine. As far as repotting, well, it actually likes what I call a tight pot. That means it likes its roots to be close to the pot. So if you do repot it, then what you want to do is just go one pot size up, and depending on how deep these roots are, which in this pot you really can't tell, you may want to only go and have that pot be 1 inch lower than, or I'm sorry, 1 inch longer, not lower, but 1 inch longer, maybe 2 inches, because you don't want to have so much soil at the base of the pot that what happens is you're watering the base and you're not getting enough water to the roots. Now, another favorite epiphyte of mine is what we call the pink Twill plant. Isn't this gorgeous? This, again, is, you have the leaves. Again, this is another plant from Ecuador, and it is also in the Tillandria family. And that's important because sometimes I call this a green Tillandria. And a Tillandria is a true air plant. The next plants I'm going to show you are the Tillandrias most people are familiar with. So this plant is a great gift. When it finally flowers, and yes, believe it or not, this pink bract is not the flower. Isn't that pretty amazing? This is, a bract is kind of the transitional point between the leaves and the flowers. And I couldn't get a picture of it, so please go and search it out on the internet. But what will happen is that it will get on the edges here what look like little blue feathers. And those little blue feathers are the actual flower. So you have the leaves, you have the bract, and then when it flowers, you'll have little blue feathers. And this plant will flower for 6 months. It doesn't really grow the way that we think it grows. But before I talk about that, just the watering technique. You want to water inside the leaves here. And you want to mist it. So you want to take your mist bottle and just mist above the plant. Not right on the plant, because this is a plant from Ecuador where there's a lot of moisture in the air, and that's what you want to give it. And you want to mist it about once a month. You want to maybe water it once a month or once every 2 months. And again, the soil is a very lightweight soil. It's one of the few, like orchids that, or rather like the Anthurium there, the Flamingo Flower plant, is that it can go into kind of a potting mixed soil. So this plant gets what I call little offsets. Now, because this plant doesn't have its flowers yet, this plant is still a baby. After it gets its flowers, and after it flowers for about 6 months, the way it actually grows is it grows by getting what we call offsets, or little pups. And that means that on the sides here, I will start seeing little shoots coming up. And those little shoots, those little offsets coming up at the edge will be the new babies. and those are what you're going to want to put in a new pot. Once you do that with offsets, it takes 2 to 3 years. I'm not saying it wrong. It takes 2 to 3 years for your pink quill plant to actually do any more flowering. Now, I called the pink quill plant the green Tillandria. And the reason is that we have what we know as gray Tillandrias. And the gray Tillandrias are the true air plants. These are plants that you never want to plant in soil. Let me show you. There are over 460 varieties of these air plants. Believe it or not, this is one of the air plants. I'm not going to go into each name, but it almost looks like a bouquet, and it looks as if it's not real. I mean, we've had people come into the garden center, take a look at this, and say, wow, that's really nice for a fake plant, but it's not. And then here is another air plant, almost the same size, not quite. And then we have what I call the babies. This is an air plant. This is another air plant. And these are air plants. See if I can kind of show you the differences with the air plants. Amazing in the sizes. And I had my air plant for over 30 years. After a while, and honestly, I got tired of dusting it, so I gave it away to somebody who really appreciated it, and it's still alive. They live forever unless you forget to take care of them with the proper watering, and that's an interesting thing too. So sometimes when you get air plants from the store, they may be a little on the dry side. And how can you tell if they're on the dry side? Well, what you want to do is the base is where the roots are. So you want to take a spray bottle, a mister, and you actually want to mist the base of the roots to get them moist. And you want to do that every several days. And then once a week, what you do, some people will tell you 20 minutes, 30 minutes. Some people will tell you overnight. You want to get a huge container, fill it with water, and you want to just soak these in water. And that rejuvenates them. These are found on crevices of trees. They're found in crevices of rocks. Sometimes they're found attached to other plants. And again, they're from the Ecuadorian region. The air plants are just phenomenal. So they do get flowers, by the way. And it really is fun when they get flowers because the flowers will tend to come up from the center. And then the flowers will actually dry. And once the flowers dry, you just take a pair of scissors and cut the flowers off, and you keep just treating your air plant with a lot of fun. Now, there are different containers and different ways of planting your air plant. And all of them involve no soil. So what I have here is I have the different kinds of potting medium. One of the potting mediums is drainage rock or little marble chips. That's one of the potting mediums that you want to use. Another potting medium is bark. And The third potting medium I'm going to show you is moss, and some of the moss, when I was trying to put it in here, got on the bark. So if you end up with moss on your bark, that's fine. But just bark is what another potting medium. And then the other potting medium can be moss, or if you want, you don't really need to put in a potting medium. So one of the in things right now is getting these type of holders that hang and putting them up in front of windows, because air plants do like a lot of very, very, very bright light. And then you can create your own little design with whichever air plants you want. You can just put them right in. Yeah, that's not bad. And just find a place where you can hang them up. So that's one way that you can, quote unquote, pot up your hanging plant. Or if you wanted to make it a little more formal, then you could take some of these chips and put them in your little container. And in case you haven't figured it out, this is basically a hanging terrarium, and your air plants love to be in terrariums that have some air holes that are open. They don't like to be in closed terrariums. And then, once again, now, with the potting mix, you have, again, something that can work that you can hang up. The other is some people will just take these large ones and just put these in some kind of decorative bowl. That works too. Still another, I wasn't going to bring a whole window in, but they do sell, they being any store like garden centers, nurseries, or any store that sells air plants. I can't believe this is really stuck on, got it. They sell this little thing with a little plastic sucking thing, and it has little brackets, and you can take your air plant, put it in the little brackets like that. And those little brackets will hold the air plant. And then you can stick it on your window. And you can get a lot of these, and you can have them all over your window. Kids, by the way, love this because there's not a lot that they have to take care of. There's not a lot they can do. You can give them a mister. They can go and they can mist it. And there's also another one that can be very popular when you're, quote unquote, potting your air plants. You can take a glass, you can take stone, put it in the glass like that, and then one of my favorite tools at the garden center is actually a paper clip. When people bring in plants for me to analyze to see if they have any disease or insect problems, I always use a paper clip to be able to move the plant around under my microscope. But I've learned that the paper clip can also be used for air plants. So you take the paper clip and take the end of the paper clip, make it into a, oh dear, just broke the paper clip. I knew I needed another one. Try this again. Take the paper clip, make a little tail for the paper clip, then move the paper clip a little more gently than I did last time, so that it is now at a 45 degree angle. Let's see, 180 is this way, so that's a 90 degree angle. And then you take your air plant, just stick it in the paper clip, and then just stick the paper clip in this glass, and voila, another way to plant your air plant. So like I said, this is really a lot of fun for kids. What's nice is if you're scared of overwatering your plants, the air plant is the one to think of, and something to consider that you can put all over the house. It works well in your office as well. The last few plants that I talked about were epiphytes. Those are the plants that like to grow in crevices of trees. They like to grow in rock crevices. They don't necessarily need any soil to grow in. Some of them you might put in a cactus or orchid mix or some kind of soil, but I'd like to switch gears. And what I'd like to do is talk about a different plant, a succulent. And this succulent is what I call a string of pearls. Now, the one thing about succulents is that their leaves retain a lot of moisture. So what that means is that you don't want to water the succulent too much, maybe once a month. Succulents also, like your epiphytes, do like bright, indirect light. And this string of pearls that we have in front of us, a lot of people will purchase it to be a hanging basket, and that's because the pearls hang down. But this plant is from South Africa, and it's not a plant that grows in the air. This is a plant that grows on the ground. And these string of pearls right here will, in nature, grow 3 feet long. And I definitely mean 3 feet long. And the little pearls, as I said, the leaves of a succulent like to retain moisture. That's where it gets most of its moisture from. So these little pearls are the moisture beads for a succulent. Again, I couldn't get a picture of it, so please go on your search engine and search string of pearls, because it is a lot more exciting than what you see here in front of you. This is a small baby, and what that means, it's a small baby plant. It doesn't have its flowers yet, and it will, in these various nooks and crevices, it will get the most beautiful white flower that has accents of pink and yellow to it. And when you do repot it, make sure that you use a cactus succulent mix. And if you read the label on a cactus succulent mix, you will see that all it is peat moss and sand. That helps with the drainage. It's true with any succulents, and it's true with any cacti. That's the type of potting mix that you want. The other, with most succulents, not all, but many of the succulents have shallow roots. So that means you don't want necessarily a pot that's very, very deep. So when you're repotting it, take a look at the depth of the roots and just get that pot maybe 2 inches deeper or longer, however you want to say it, than where you find the roots. Otherwise, what will happen is that when you go to water your succulent, all that water will collect at the base of the pot, and that water then just will stay there, and if you're not careful, you'll have root rot. One of the things that all the plants that I discussed today have in common is that they need a lot of humidity. And yes, you can take a mister and mist them, but sometimes that's not enough humidity. So you can create more humidity by getting yourself what I like to call a pot saucer. You can get a fancy one, you can get this one is just plastic, and then you put rocks in here. And you don't put the large rocks, you just put in something like marble chips. And then you add water into this pot. And what happens is that that water will get the humidity that you need. So once you have water in here, you would take your plants and you would just put them on the rocks, and voila, you now have a humidity tray and your plants are getting the humidity that they need, and this makes them happy. And you can also do what my mother used to do with her large plants that needed humidity. She'd take a wine glass that was broken, put it in the pot, put water into that glass, and that would get the humidity. Houseplants are a wonderful addition to your interior design. As I said, they bring color and architectural interest to your home. And studies show that they improve the air quality of your home as well as increase your mental and physical health. What's so wonderful is that the number of houseplants that you'll find now are way more than just the usual suspects. So if you have any questions about these plants or any plants, or if you have any questions about your lawn or gardening in general, just contact me at misty@burkenursery.com. I'm your host, Misty Kuceris, and I'd like to thank you for spending your time with me here at Gardening with Burke Nursery. I'm looking forward to helping you grow your garden.
Funding for this program is made possible by Burke Nursery and Garden Center in Burke, Virginia. You'll find trees and shrubs, perennials and annuals, water garden supplies, houseplants, and bird and gardening supplies. Burke Nursery also provides landscape, plant diagnostic, and installation services, and much more. For more information, you can check out their website or call 703-323-1188.